And welcome to the What the Hell Everything podcast. My name is Smitty. Thanks for coming on and seeing what I'm up to. And what I'm up to today is my now annual status update, essentially, regarding the 5-year plan. And I was going to do that. I'm actually about a week late recording this. I was going to do it last week, but got caught up in some seasonal depression when, when it was all of a sudden a blizzard. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not doing anything. I'm going to sit inside and not do any sort of work. You know, I'm going to sit down and watch feel-good movies because it's cold outside and I'm not happy at all. It should be warm. It's April, goddammit. And it's been a minute since I've dropped a podcast, so I wanted to get this out. I wanted to get this status update out and just kind of take you through the journey where I am now versus where I started. And it's definitely a mix of I'm not happy where I am. I'm not necessarily happy with where the podcast is at, but I am happy with where I am at in life, if that makes any sense at all. So let's just, again, where I started versus where I am now. Year one, after I decided to leave radio and bet on myself. I said, okay, I'm going to basically do the radio version, the internet podcast version of my radio show. I've said this before, I go back and listen to some old podcasts, and it's similar to when I listen to old radio bits. You know, when I first started radio, I'm like, God damn, that is what you call cringy. But it's supposed to be, right? In a podcast, when it first starts out, like mine, people are listening right off the bat. People are listening to the first couple episodes. And, you know, if your podcast isn't there, and people are not going to stick around. And admittedly, it wasn't great starting out. I had the Six Packs on Mars podcast, political podcast that I was doing. I had the Rock and Roll Roundtable album review podcast with Michael in December. And, you know, just trying to throw stuff at the wall, see what sticks. Have all these grand visions when you start out. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. But in reality, if it's not working, at least for me, you got to switch it up. So like the Six Packs on Mars podcast wasn't working. I let that go. And then realizing, you know, when I go from radio to long form talking like on this podcast, you know, my crutch when I was in radio was you can, you know, if you're not live, which sometimes you're live, sometimes you're not. If you screw something up and mess something up, if it's live, you can just kind of be like, ha, laugh it off and go into a song, which is kind of my staple when I was on the radio because I made a lot of mistakes verbally. Because I've always been uncomfortable with my own brain saying words, you know. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to do this Sunday morning talk practice to kind of try to force myself to be comfortable enough to let the thoughts flow as close to like your true authentic self. Your true authentic self is what's in your brain, what you wish everybody heard. You were able to say to people what is on your brain. That's what you wish people knew about you, was your true, genuine self. I really just have, again, did this Sunday morning talk practice to try to get to the point where I was comfortable just going, without having to stop and worry about the uhs and, oh, I lose my place and this and that. And that really worked, and it helped out, and it helped with the podcast, you know. But especially towards the end of year one, people are already trailing off the podcast, and you start losing, essentially, downloads. And I'm like, I got to figure something out to get this podcast, hopefully this YouTube page specifically is what I was kind of focusing on, to try to get visibility with the podcast. I was okay, I've been thinking about doing rock reactions for some time. Let's do that. I'm going to try to figure this out. And I brought the old radio bit, the Rock Radar, and brought it to the internet and decided, okay, I'm going to do this music reaction. And that actually brought the page into the algorithm. People are checking out a lot of reactions. I currently have like 4,000 plus subscribers that are mostly due to the music reaction. And it was amazing. But, you know, by the end of year one, let's see, before even the end of year one, when did I start? April 21. And then in July 2022, got kicked out of my rental because the place got sold. And they said, sorry, fuckface, you can't stay here anymore. Like a lot of people in Northern Michigan, you're living paycheck to paycheck. And the job that I was at the time was not cutting it financially. I'd end up getting another job at the casino just to try to make ends meet. And I was not in a place, I knew in like April, I want to say, that we were going to have to move out of my place. My brother and I were living together. And, I couldn't find a place because the economy in the Traverse City real estate is insane, like many, many other places. So I had to move back in with my parents ended up being probably 6 months before I moved to Cadillac in 2022 in October, I want to say. And just killed consistency. And any sort of like momentum that I had started to go away. I tried to do some content when I was at my parents', but it just didn't work. And then ended up moving to Cadillac, which was a terrible decision. That's documented. It ended up having to move out of there in like 6 months, back to the folks. But in that 6-month period from 2022 to, I want to say, May of 2023, I started trying to do music reactions and throw some more things out. I did a Metallica-thon. I did the Sleepy Hollow audiobook sort of thing that I was just messing with, trying to focus on some creativity that were fun to do, but didn't do shit for the algorithm, obviously, because nobody gives a shit about your Sleepy Hollow audiobook, Smith. And that's okay. I do it for me. A lot of the things in, with my page, there's so much weird shit and, podcast stuff that like music listeners that are on the channel for reactions don't necessarily give a shit about, and that's okay too. You can't expect people to be into that stuff. But what happens, at least for me, you're trying to do this podcast, and the podcast was the main thing. I wanted the show, people to listen to the show. And especially after that second move from Cadillac back to the parents' house, which I was in there from May, I want to say, 2023, until I finally got this apartment in December of 2023. This apartment in Mansalona, this is just amazing, and I love this place so much. Please let me keep it for another year. By the time I moved into this place, I didn't do shit for content pretty much when I was at my parents' for those 6 months or whatever it was in 2023. Because my mental health was just terrible. Moving back in with the folks again was just killing me. I did a little bit of content when I had a makeshift studio set up at Brother Levi's apartment. And, still trying. And again, I'm getting most of my podcast listens are from people not in my local area of Northern Michigan. They're people that are listening to music reactions and have found my channel and have found my podcast like that. And people that are interested in the Smitty Learns Irish pubcast have been following as well. But not getting really anything to the local audience that I at least used to have when I was in radio. It's just like, you wonder how many people actually give a fuck about your podcast. You're like, oh, okay, you're not on the radio. Stop thinking you're cooler than you actually are, Smith. You don't know how much of that vibe is there. I've had people say, hey, how do I find your podcast? Even though we're friends on social media, they're not seeing my shit. There's the whole, again, like it, subscribe, it gets into the algorithm. The more you do that, the more you're going to see the thing. The point is, when I got into this Cadillac place, I was so inconsistent for so long. I said, you know what? I finally have this studio. I'm finally going to focus on the podcast, putting 1 or 2 out every week and really hammering the music reactions as well. And I was for a solid 6 months, the first 6 months in this Cadillac place. In this Mansalona apartment, not Cadillac, from 2023, probably all of the first half of 2024. So much content out. I bet you I put out 30 podcasts in that, more than that in that first 6 months. More than I had done in probably 2 years. And just, I don't want to say that nobody gives a fuck. It just seems like nobody gives a fuck. And again, I know It's like that line from Good Morning Vietnam. I know in my heart I am funny, but maybe it's this weird misplaced confidence that I have, where I really do feel like I am getting way better at this kind of stuff, and turning my coherent thoughts into coherent words. That's always been the struggle for me. I'm like, I got it in there. How do I get it out so people can hear? And I feel like I am so much better at that now than I used to be. And again, maybe misplaced confidence, but I am so, it's weird. I'm not happy where the podcast is, but I'm happy with where I am, I'm happy where I am at from a professional standpoint. I say professional, even if this podcast thing doesn't work out, I could probably get back into radio and do that for the rest of my life if I want. And that's could very well be a thing at some point in my life, getting back into radio. But I want my profession to be this, doing a podcast, being creative. And that has just become a huge, huge thing for me. Because again, the first 6 months I'm putting out all this content and I am not getting shit. And that kills your confidence. Kills your confidence because nobody is watching or listening to the things that you feel good about. The shows that I was doing in 2024, the first half of 2024, I thought were pretty fucking good, man. And I was really happy with how they were turning out. And when nobody, you think you're doing well and nobody's checking it out, that kills your self-esteem. And then in probably... I realized, man, this podcast thing is not going to happen. I got to do something else. Let's do something in your mouth, which I would, I stand by that as being super fun content. And what I kind of was just hoping it would catch fire and go. It obviously takes a lot of consistency before your podcast will go anywhere. But and I was really hoping that the local audience that I have had or would check this out, and a lot of people did, but it just didn't work enough, and I couldn't get it financed because doing this on this podcast anyway on a total shoestring budget, and really just winging a prayer on that one with something in your mouth, a bunch of great friends that would let me put things in their mouth with blindfolds on, and it was super fun, and I just couldn't make it work. And when I realized that, I'm like, son of a bitch, well, let's kill this. And then I don't want to say I decided to kill the podcast. I was just like, I'm just trying again to find something that sticks with people, a new idea, a new presentation, things like that to kind of jumpstart it, try to get the algorithm thing going again. And then after that failed, which I would totally love to bring back at some point if I can finance it, something in your mouth, absolutely. But for right now, that's fucking dead. So I decided, you know what? I really just missed doing a show with somebody else. I had initially planned for this podcast to have co-hosts regularly and to have people with me regularly. It just hasn't really worked out like that, especially when you have to move all over goddamn northern Michigan for 3 years. But I was like, you know what? I really miss just doing the show with somebody else. That was kind of just the fun part for me when I was in radio, was doing a show with somebody else. So I got a hold of my great buddy Brian, a.k.a. Cartman. I said, you know what, man, let's do a fucking podcast together. And that's still going, and I'm happy with that. But that still does not really have shit for visibility. Not really many people are checking that out, which is a bummer, because I'm pretty happy with that podcast too. Again, and it makes you wonder about like what people think of when they see it, because I got pretty good visibility, especially on the What the Hell Everything page, my personal Facebook page as well. 2,500 followers on Facebook I have. Cartman has like 12,000, and he won Best Small Market Morning Show or something like that from the Michigan Association of Broadcasters Award. So he is a very visible figure as well, and we don't get shit for views on our podcast. So you wonder what people think when they see it, or if they see it. And you're just like, man, what do I got to do to get this podcast in front of people? But again, at some point, you just hope you do enough content and something like that's going to stick. Like, I'm doing all these music reactions, and what happens with the music reactions, that kind of just fell off. People just stopped checking it out. It doesn't show up in people's algorithm when you're inconsistent. So that kind of brings me to where I'm at now. I'm rocking some super fucking long hair right now. I'm not doing cameras anymore, but I did turn the camera on just now, so you could see this long rock and roll hair that I'm having, which is almost down past my shoulders a little bit. I can't really put it up in a ponytail yet at work, but pretty close to that. But I have some great rock and roll hair going right now, which is a first for me. I've never had long hair before. So that's one thing I got going for me, is I have some great rock and roll hair. But then, the music reactions that I was doing and have been doing have been all rock and roll. And I was already so well versed in rock and roll that all of the bands that I've had to react to are like underground bands and or bands that I just haven't heard before, which is, but none of the big bands that get somebody's rock reaction channel going usually. And then having to be inconsistent with two different, like 3 to 6 month sort of time frames where I wasn't putting out a lot of content and that stuff. I mean, that shit sort of disappears from people's algorithms when you are inconsistent and you're not doing bands that they know. They're not going to check that shit out. So I kind of made the decision. I'm done doing most music reactions for the channel. And I don't mean all the way, but it's really only going to be album reactions at this point, something I'm interested in, something YouTube viewers are interested in. I only have a year to go until I'm in Ireland for this pubcast, this huge fucking trip. And I'm not going to really be worrying about, music reactions while I'm there. I can't. I have to be working on that. So at this point, and I really got to tell you, if I lose subscribers because of it, I understand. I appreciate it so much that people have checked the page out and liked the reactions and like what I do. It's just a thing that I just can't focus on them at this point. So it's only album reactions from here on out, once a month, maybe twice a month, depending. Again, it's not something I really feel like I can commit to because I have to get as much support and as much visibility to the Smitty Learns Irish pubcast that I am starting in 1 year. I have the brand new Smitty Learns Irish pubcast YouTube channel. Please subscribe to that if you're able to. And that's where the Smitty Learns Irish pubcast is going to be. All that stuff. All of the Irish music reactions and the album reactions I do are going to be, that are Irish, mind you, are going to be on that new page. It was weird. I didn't want to do music reactions on the Irish page, but I'm, want to learn all things Irish. That includes music, that includes sports, that includes literature, it includes politics, it includes everything Irish. So on that new channel, it's about creating the Irish conversation and learning about things Irish. So all Irish music reactions are going to be on that page, and any just music reactions will be just album or live set reactions, like I'm going to do Devin Townsend's new opera called The Moth. And I'm looking forward to that. So just things like that, some cool things if I can get to them. But then the big thing that I'm really just focusing on right now, because I just realized the podcast is not really fucking selling. I've had a lot of good stuff that I've had recently, at least I feel is good. Going down the political spectrum a little bit, which I don't really do intentionally. Sometimes I bring it up on a podcast here and there where I'm at politically, but it's never a focus. But I'll tell you, the last couple that I did have felt really good, and I've felt this whole world that we're living in now is just something that I can't not talk about. So I'm feeling good about the podcast, but I'm really worried mostly about me not chasing my creativity and the things that I have embraced about myself. Because again, it may be misplaced confidence at this point, but I'm writing a lot. and have all these creative writing exercises that I'm making myself doing. I've never written ever, aside from like commercials for the radio. I mean, I've written kind of a script before. I've adapted books for like radio scripts before. But I've never really sat down and written my own thoughts and stories and like that. Every time I sit down to write anything, and I've wanted to do this my whole life, I've always just felt like I should be writing something. But every time I sit down to write anything, I get one or two sentences and I'm like, that's fucking stupid, and I put it away. Now all that is, just insecurities. That's all it is me just thinking I'm not good enough when I don't have any proof to the contrary. But what I'm finding now, I'm making myself do all of these creative writing exercises, and it started, when I first started trying to write again several months ago, it was the same thing. Write a sentence, write a couple sentences. Fucking stupid. I hate this. I suck at it. I can't fucking do it. But I have forced myself, similar to like Sunday morning talk practices, where, that helped me get totally comfortable, a lot more comfortable anyway, being live or flowing and things like that. And the same with the writing now. I said before on a podcast earlier, I don't know if anybody's ever going to see this, but I'm doing it for me, and it feels great. It is something that I've gotten better at. And it's, again, I said how much I hated writing those first couple sentences of anything I write, where I'm like, oh my God, this sucks. It's terrible. But I've got to the point now where I've just done it so much. Every day I write for like an hour or something like that. Just creative writing exercises, poems, things like that. Just anything that comes into my fucking head. I've got to the point now where I'm like, that's actually kind of good. That's not bad. That's okay. And that is such a fucking leap from I suck, I'm terrible, I'll never do this, what was I thinking? Practice makes, not perfect, but better. And this is something I'm going to chase and do I would love it to be for the rest of my life. I don't know if I'll ever be a professional writer. I don't know. A lot of the because I just have a lot of one-off stories and like diatribe thoughts and things like that. I have damn near close to a novel that I have outlined. Again, I don't know if anybody's going to hear it or see it. But a lot of these little stories I just have are planned as short stories to be read on the podcast. And that's kind of how I just plan to release them. I don't want to publish anything necessarily, although I may. But that's where I'm at, man. I just said, you know what? I got to try to focus on the Irish pubcast, my need to be creative, and try to do some music album reactions to try to get my page back into the algorithm and to try to get eyes on the pubcast. That's what it's all about. So I know I've been rambling on this thing, and if you're still here, I really, really do appreciate it because, it's been a struggle. It's been a struggle mentally. It's been a struggle financially. And I'm not even saying that. I don't want people to feel bad for me, especially right now in northern Michigan. There are so many people struggling, especially with that historic ice storm that we had in northern Michigan, where thousands and thousands and thousands of people lost power, are just getting it back now after like 2 weeks. Trees everywhere went down. It was like a Category 5 hurricane here in northern Michigan with a fucking crazy ice storm. So there are so many people that can relate to that financial struggle. So I'm not trying to make anybody feel bad for me as far as my journey goes. It's tough all around. But I look at it where so many people that have started podcasts or projects similar to this that have got this far in and have shown little to zero financial reward anyway, and then little to zero algorithm reward. certainly have called it fucking quits. If nobody's looking at your shit after 4 years and paying attention, you're going to quit. And I have thought so many times about quitting, but the thing that keeps me going is the belief in myself that I can succeed in this arena, just the creative arena, not necessarily a podcast or video stuff, but in some creative realm, I know that I have it in me to succeed. And then everybody else that tries stuff like this and doesn't see success quits. So I'm still fucking here. I'm still doing this. Maybe and it looks different from where I was 4 years ago, but I'm still doing it. I'm still throwing shit at the wall to see what sticks. And if I can ever make this a full-time gig, then, I was talking to somebody. It just kills going to work. Obviously kills everybody's soul. But like the job that I have is so social because I wait tables at a steakhouse in the casino. It's a fine dining steakhouse. And it's so social. It's constant small talk with guests. It's constant small talk with workers. And what I'm realizing, I always, you say you're an introvert, and I definitely relate to that. But what I'm learning so much about like neurodivergent people and the neurodivergent spectrum, I don't want to really I'm almost positive I have a lot of ADHD and possibly some autism on the spectrum. It overlaps. And I hate saying that. I hate saying that I could be autistic because I haven't got tested. But what I've learned recently from listening to many, many, many people with autism and ADHD that have not gotten tested. Well, not like a legitimate medical test, but I did do an online, like a bullshit 30 question, mostly disagree, don't disagree, strongly agree, that kind of thing, 30 questions. And it was like, yeah, you're probably autistic. Getting tested is probably important, but you don't need it because there is a way to live your life for neurodivergent people, realizing how much the small talk kills the creativity and the motivation. You're so exhausted when you get home. It's hard to even function. I don't do podcast work when I get home at night because I'm just done. But I'm realizing that if you live your life a certain way, which doesn't include a job with a bunch of small talk. I don't want to get in a big talk about the things I've learned about autism and ADHD and those things right now, but it's basically how you live your life, how you choose to live your life, and how you treat yourself mentally, and the things you maybe are not good at, and the things you used to just berate yourself about and say, God, I am just a terrible fucking human. I suck at this. I am awful. The things you tell yourself that create depressions and create terrible mental health, intrusive thoughts when you're not good at something, or you forget to check your emails, or you forget about this bill, or you forget to eat, which happens quite a bit. How you talk to yourself, how you respond to those things, being more mindful, practicing mindfulness, meditating, all of those things have helped me. So committing to living your life a different way rather than the constant cycle, and really that definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. I'm working on schedules for myself. I'm working on which sounds, to people that do not have the issues I have, it sounds super easy. It sounds like, oh, you just do this, set a schedule, set a budget, do this. It's super easy. I stress to you, it is fucking not. But I'm learning to, again, navigate those mental hurdles, so to speak. But again, focusing on the creativity and giving yourself some fucking slack, and new, better ways to deal with yourself and creating new habits are all things I'm working on. And it seems to be working, and I'm getting better at a lot of things, and I still feel great about the possibilities. So I leave for Ireland in 1 year, just under 1 year. I'm working on getting my passport currently. I'm going to be getting some plane ticket, hopefully maybe soon, just one. But, where am I at as far as like Ireland goes? I'm fucking broke. The plan was to save up a lot of money. My car is not going to be able to be sellable like I thought it was going to be. I have catastrophic engine failure, and I'm limping it along as we speak. So I'm not going to be able to sell that like I thought. I still owe money on that. And that's just a thing that happens to people. But again, the moving and all this and all that, and I'm fucking broke like most people. If I didn't have this Irish trip to go on and save, I'd be okay. I would be fine. I wouldn't be stressed out. But the Irish trip was going to require a budget. And I'm just going to keep working at it. And I was already planning on selling a bunch of shit. I don't really have that many nice things to sell. I don't know how much I'm going to get. I don't know how much I'm going to go to Ireland with. I'm going to be relying on donations before and during the pubcast to hopefully just, if I can pull off the whole year, I will almost be shocked. This pubcast might only last 2 or 3 months. It might not work. It might not work a full year. I'm being as positive and as optimistic as I know how. But sometimes you have to have a reality fucking check in your face. But I know I'm going to try, and I know I'm going to keep doing this no matter what. I'm going to be focusing on my creativity. If I wasn't going to Ireland and this was just a hobby, it would not be stressing me out as much. But I'm still going to do it because I'm still here doing my thing, and that's where we're at. 4 years in to the 5-year plan. I have 1 year left. Hopefully you'll continue to follow if you have been. And then if you haven't, welcome to the journey. It's a journey for sure. And I'm happy to be here. Be sure to like that Smitty Learns Irish pubcast channel on YouTube. I'm going to throw the link is here in the description somewhere. And then, of course, my other podcast that I do with my good friend Brian, the Smartman Show podcast with Brian and Nate. We're not smart, but we're trying to be. That's all you can do is try. And that does it for me. I am done. Out of here. Back next time where I'll have all sorts of stuff, current events, and all kinds of things I'll probably get yapping about. So, thank you.